People are dying. Museums, planes, and even nuclear plants are being bombed. Ukraine's condition is far beyond terrible at this point, and the majority of countries around the world have come up with a collective decision, which is to do absolutely nothing of importance. If you're wondering why most countries are sending love, light, and condolences instead of actually helping, we are going to be explaining why no country is explicitly supporting Ukraine. Unless you have been sleeping under a rock, you probably have seen all the hashtags, moments of silences, and different forms of virtual signaling that have been thrown at Ukraine. However, looking at their condition, it's obvious they need more than the Burj Khalifa changing its color to support Ukraine. What Ukraine needs to defend itself from Russia is more boots on the ground and way more artillery. But what most countries are doing is throwing sanctions.
We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies.
This just means they are going to treat Russia so poorly that it will make the people of Russia change their leader or their intentions to invade Ukraine. You're probably wondering, has sanctions ever stopped a war before? And the answer is 100% no. So who is actually sending Ukraine what they need in order to push back against Russia? Fortunately for Ukraine, weapons are being sent. And those weapons are a lot or cost a lot. First off, the United States is sending Ukraine a lot of weapons. And that's not surprising one bit. I mean, the United States of America might be lacking affordable healthcare, housing, and even clean water in some places. But if there is anything they will never lack, it's guns. On February 25th, President Joe Biden instructed the State Department to release up to an additional $350 million worth of weapons from US stocks to Ukraine. Since the beginning of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine has been asking for Javelin anti-tank weapons and Stinger missiles to gun down the aircraft of the Russians. The Pentagon released a statement saying that the weapons they sent to Ukraine included anti-armor, small arms, body armor, and various munitions in support of Ukraine's frontline defenders. A State Department spokesperson said anti-aircraft systems were also included in the material. The United States has been spending a lot, and I mean a lot of money on the Ukraine and Russia conflict. And even official figures have clarified that. Antony John Blinken, who is an American government official and diplomat, said that over the past year, the United States has committed more than $1 billion in security assistance to Ukraine. Surprisingly, another country that is supporting Ukraine is Germany. This is surprising because when it comes to the history of war, Germans have had quite a notorious past. Germany is actually pushing a lot of support for Ukraine, with them providing support to Ukraine refugees, with Germany announcing Ukrainian citizens who hold a biometric passport do not require a visa to enter Germany for a short-term stay. Germany is also supplying Ukraine with 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger surface-to-air missiles from Bundeswehr stocks for defense against Russia. Even their own Chancellor Olaf Scholz released a statement saying the Russian invasion of Ukraine marks a turning point. It is our duty to do our best to support Ukraine in defending itself against Putin's invading army. There are many other major countries supporting Ukraine with arms and many more valuables, such as Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and literally the whole of NATO. If Ukraine has different countries who have become their allies by supporting them, that means Russia also has its own allies supporting them. When it comes to drawing the lines between allies and enemies in international conflicts, the line can be sort of blurry. It's like trying to answer if a hot dog is technically a sandwich. You see, Russia has countries who aren't clearly supporting them, but who are in no way against them. For example, Russian allies and neighboring countries like Armenia, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan have chosen to say absolutely nothing after the attacks on Ukraine. The Azerbaijani president himself, Ilham Aliyev, refused to comment on the conflict while visiting Moscow to speak with Putin on bilateral relations. His silence can be quite confusing because, knowing the state of things, Putin won't have a physical meeting with anyone who he doesn't see as an ally. Officials in Kazakhstan also remain quiet on the growing conflict and Moscow's recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk. Speaking of blurry lines, another country whose identity as an ally is confusing is China. The drama between China, America, and Russia is so complex that it deserves its own soap opera. The answer to if China is an ally to Russia depends on who you're asking. China on their own have tried to appeal to Russia and Ukraine. After Russia first invaded Ukraine this year, China's government did try at least to appear to have a position of neutrality when they called for a peaceful resolution and said it supported the principle of territorial integrity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a public plea to China's Xi Jinping to intervene. Although China themselves would identify as neutral, the American government believes that China's appearance of being neutral is nothing but a facade. The American government doesn't see the Chinese government being neutral, but rather they see them as an adversary, or like the kids this day will say, is an op to the Chinese government. The Chinese appearance of neutrality is false. That was confirmed when the CIA director William Burns told Congress the war in Ukraine may have unsettled China's leaders, but it doesn't appear to have shaken the Xi-Putin partnership. It seems the United States is heavily supporting the notion that China is an ally to Russia. According to BBC News, unnamed US officials reportedly told multiple news outlets that Russia had asked China to provide military assistance after it began the invasion. The Chinese government responded by saying that the United States is spreading misinformation. Even the spokesman for the foreign ministry in Beijing, Zhao Lijian, said the US had been spreading disinformation targeting China on the Ukraine issue with malicious intentions. Mr. Zhao said something that sounded like it was straight out of Donald Trump's teleprompter. When Mr. Zhao was asked if he could clarify whether China had received a request for military help from Russia, Mr. Zhao said this was fake news. Another country everyone is wondering about their position is India. India hasn't been the loudest voice against Russia invading Ukraine, and some analysts have seen their silence as a loud message. In the past, Russia and India have always had a very strong bond. India's position on the conflict is so blurry, even Ukraine and Russia have both made public appeals for Delhi to take a clear stand. Although India hasn't said so, their past relationship is one of fondness. Russia continues to be India's largest arms supplier, even though its share has dropped to 49% from 70% due to India's decision to diversify its portfolio and boost domestic defense manufacturing. It seems India isn't going to go against the hand that arms them. Although India hasn't painted itself as an ally to Russia, what it has done is show it doesn't want conflict at all, and they want their citizens to be safe. The former Indian diplomat Anil Triguniat released a statement that best describes how India feels about the conflict. He said India can't take a side at the risk of endangering the safety of its citizens. Moreover, it's seeing the holistic picture, which involves keeping channels open with everyone. All this talk about which countries are allies or enemies is probably making you think, are we going to have World War III? Well, the simple answer is, it kinda maybe can happen. Although even President Joe Biden himself has expressed that World War III is unlikely, there are many who still see it happening. Billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackman has warned that World War III has likely started already amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What is everyone bothered about Russia starting World War III isn't because of its millions of soldiers or its tanks, drones, or jets. It's because Russia has the one ingredient needed to start a world-scale conflict, and that's nuclear weapons. Under Russia's military doctrine, most recently updated in December 2014, Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to the use of nuclear and other types of weapons of mass destruction against it and/or its allies, as well as in the event of aggression against the Russian Federation. Although that looks good on paper, the issue with it is that it's most likely just on paper. On paper, Russian citizens have freedom of speech. but they have up to 7 missing journalists, and trust me, they didn't disappear because no one reads the news anymore. The fact is that no legislation can stop Putin from doing what he wants to do. The real question is, will he do it? Unfortunately, only those close to him are the ones who know for sure. The worst case of the Ukraine and Russia conflict is the major countries of the world pulling a Mexican standoff, but instead of guns, it's nuclear bombs. Also unfortunate is the fact that the top 3 countries with nuclear weapons are Russia with 6,255 nuclear warheads, the United States of America with 5,550 nuclear warheads, and China with 350 nuclear warheads. Let's just say you have higher chances of making a backward free throw from the middle of a basketball field blindfolded than making all 3 of these countries get along. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is a very delicate one, and any wrong move can lead to the death of millions from both sides. Russia's nuclear arsenal, combined with their tendencies to ally with powerful nations, makes them a force to be reckoned with. And any nation that gets on their bad side has high tendencies of all-out war. Even Putin himself is threatened, consequences you have never faced in your history for anyone who tries to interfere with us. Instead of actually interfering, most countries have decided to show support from afar, due to their fear of Russia. And that's exactly why no country is explicitly supporting Ukraine.